Very good morning to you and welcome to the programme. Iran has launched a barrage of missiles at Israel overnight after Israel killed another two of their top officials. Among them was Iran's security chief, Ali Larijani, who was considered one of the most powerful figures in Iran.
Now, the head of the Iranian army has vowed revenge. He's threatened to launch a decisive retaliation against America and Israel. And meanwhile, the US dropped some powerful, deep penetrator bombs on Iranian missile sites along the Strait of Hormuz.
There's a lot to get to today, but we start inside Iran, where our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, is one of the few international journalists reporting from there. He's been speaking to Iranians who've been themselves impacted by the strikes.
4-year-old Anita was pulled out of the rubble last week after an airstrike destroyed her home. She's in a coma with severe head injuries. Her mother, Ziba, is in torment. Doctors say Anita is unlikely to survive. She was playing with her brother, Artem, when the missile came in, leaving him with multiple injuries. It was terrifying, he says.
We were on the stairs, me and my sister. Suddenly everything went black. I didn't understand what happened next. I didn't hear a sound, nothing. I thought I was dreaming.
A family destroyed by America and Israel's air campaign, Ziba had this message for their leaders.
Why did this happen to us, to innocent people, my innocent 4-year-old girl who was only going downstairs to come to me? Why do it to ordinary people like us? We were sitting at home together. They've taken away our safety, our happiness, and the health of our children.
It isn't hard to see why many civilians are being hurt when you come to places like this, where airstrikes are hitting targets in residential areas. The impact of the firepower unleashed here is hard to take in, and residents told us these were civilian apartment blocks.
Local residents say a security organisation of some sort was based somewhere in all this. But I guess the point to make is that targeting that has ended up with pretty much an entire city block being devastated. The Iranians say 40 people died here. It's not clear how many of them were civilians and how many were members of that organisation.
Sayed showed us the floor his 35-year-old daughter had been at home on when the airstrike destroyed the building. Another family torn apart by this war.
Whoever has caused this, and it's 100% Trump and Netanyahu, I wish the same thing would happen to them. You have no idea what suffering I have been through for a week, day and night.
We crossed town after reports of more airstrikes. Nowhere is safe here, even in daylight in the centre of town.
It's a pretty jittery mood here after these reports of Ali Larijani, the top security official, being assassinated, and the top paramilitary commander, but also the fact that there was an airstrike in this square this morning on security force vehicles right in the middle of the Iranian capital. We've got this sort of daily show of defiance, this parade with Iranian flags and chanting, but also today we've seen a lot more security on the streets, and Iranians are being urged not to come out tonight for the annual fireworks night ahead of Persian New Year at the end of the week, presumably because people, the fear is, could come out and there could be more unrest.
This is the last time we saw Ali Larijani last Friday. His killing only escalates this war. It will almost certainly provoke a more hardline response from Iran. The conflict is deepening, and more innocent civilians will, without doubt, pay the price. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, Tehran.
Dominic Waghorn there, showing us some reporting, striking reporting from inside Iran. And of course, we've been looking at the conflict and the impact of the conflict across so much of the Middle East, but a pretty striking thing happened yesterday stateside because one of Donald Trump's intelligence officers resigned from his role over the Iran war.
His name is Joe Kent. He was a counter-terrorism chief. He'd been a big supporter of the president previously, but said he can no longer back the war, questioning why it had started in the first place.
Well, let's go live now to Washington. We can talk to our correspondent, Stephen Murphy. Stephen, what's gone on and how significant is it?
It is significant. It came out of the blue here yesterday. Joe Kent, well, who is he? He is a highly decorated and highly respected military veteran, a former Army Green Beret Special Forces. He served in the CIA as well and has been deployed overseas about a dozen times in service. His own wife served as well in the US Navy. She was actually killed by a suicide bomb attack in Syria. He was a staunch Donald Trump supporter right up until the moment that he wasn't, and he resigned suddenly over the premise of this war in Iran. His resignation letter was published as part of that, and he effectively undermined the entire cause for going to war and said that Donald Trump had been using misinformation and that effectively America had gone down this road due to external pressure, specifically Israel, and Israel comes up quite a lot in his resignation letter. He said that the powerful American lobby was also responsible. As you can probably imagine, that has led him open here in the US as the analysis continues to some allegations of anti-Semitism as well. Donald Trump was asked about it in the Oval Office yesterday. He didn't look too happy about the entire situation. He was very dismissive, saying that Joe Kent was a very nice guy, but he was very weak on security, and it's better that he was gone. But certainly on the ground here, you can see ordinary Americans really hurting from rocketing fuel costs, and it's at a time when the administration has really have to go on the defensive to try and justify the necessity of this excursion, as Donald Trump likes to call it, in Iran. So this really hurts those efforts.
And Stephen, you mentioned there the Oval Office. You were in there yesterday as the Irish Taoiseach was visiting the President on St Patrick's Day. And we saw the President criticise Keir Starmer again, in part in response to one of your questions to President Trump. I thought it was really interesting that Michael Martin, the Irish PM, did stand up for Starmer a little bit, did stand against the President a little bit, despite being right there in the room with him, which some past leaders haven't done. Let's just have a taste of that.
Keir Starmer has done a lot to reset the Irish-British relationship. I just want to put that on the record. But I do believe that he's a very earnest, sound person who I think you have a capacity to get on with, and you've got on with him before.
Okay.
What was that moment like? Because only a few weeks ago, there was another scathing attack from the President to European allies, and Chancellor Merz of Germany sat there silently. So I watched that and was like, respect to the Irish PM. He tried to make a point and still keep President Trump on side.
Look, this was another Oval Office meeting full of surprises. We didn't really expect Micheál Martin to engage in much in the way of pushback. Last year, he effectively didn't push back on anything the President said, and it was regarded as a diplomatic success. So we were surprised in the Oval Office when Micheál Martin, who could be criticised on many political fronts, but is seen as fundamentally a pretty decent person, and is somebody who does genuinely have a warm relationship with Keir Starmer. We saw that in Cork only last week. The two men met. I was in that room as well, and you could see they have a genuinely congenial working relationship. He has praised Keir Starmer for the work he has done in restoring a very fractured Anglo-Irish relationship post-Brexit. And after Donald Trump criticised Keir Starmer, I think for the fourth time, Micheál Martin interjected, and he was able to sort of politely but firmly remind Donald Trump of that good work that Keir Starmer has done, and said that he had the capacity to do similar work in repairing the transatlantic relationship as well. So he also pushed back on some other things as well. For example, the very sort of MAGA perception of the EU and European countries more generally as being overrun with immigration. Micheál Martin keen to point out to the US president that was a mischaracterization, and that legal immigration was there in part due to the success of economies like Ireland's as well. You have to say Donald Trump took it fairly well, and it is always quite dangerous to push back in this Oval Office against the views of the US president. But Micheál Martin certainly going to bat, I think, for Keir Starmer here in this Oval Office meeting.
He certainly did. Stephen, thank you very much indeed. Stephen Murphy there in Washington. Now, there's been more strikes across the Middle East overnight. Let's just take you through some of the developments, shall we? Iran's been striking Israel. 2 people killed in those attacks when a missile attack struck an apartment building. The Israeli military confirmed a train station was also hit in the centre of the country.
These pictures capture the devastation in Beirut. The city's been heavily attacked overnight. And this morning, the Lebanese Health Ministry say at least 6 people were killed and 24 others wounded in Israeli attacks in the centre of the city. Israeli strikes also hit the southern suburbs.
In Iraq, the US Embassy has been attacked yet again, with drones hitting the compound in Baghdad, which caused, as you can see there, a massive fire. And of course, what we've also been talking about as well is the killing of Ali Larijani, the kind of top security chief in Iran. So I think it's worth reminding you about who exactly is running Iran, because there's been a lot of strikes impacting the government there. So, as we know, the supreme leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was assassinated at the beginning of the war. He was replaced by his son, described as like his dad on steroids, who is reportedly injured. He hasn't been seen recently in public. Other high-ranking leaders, like, for example, the Secretary of Iran's Defence Council, the Defence Minister, and also the commander of Iran's powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, all of these men are dead. And the commander of the volunteer Basij paramilitary forces as well, killed. This is a group responsible for Iran's crackdown, the brutal crackdown on civilians. He was killed alongside Ali Larijani. Now, who is left? Well, Iran's president, still alive. Iran's chief justice, still alive. But look, frankly, the country's senior leadership has been decimated. And it feels like they're still, I guess, very, very unclear about who is running Iran and the leadership structure.
Oh, absolutely, and we know how disrupted it's been, and looking forward to talking about this with Michael Clark later on in the programme, because to get his perspective, he talked so much about Larijani in the last couple of weeks, so how significant it is that he is no longer around. That'll come up later.
Yeah, and of course, you know, this was initially a war that we were told would be about regime change, and it is really unclear about what that regime change is going to look like, and if there is any chance of, I guess, the people of Iran having the kind of leadership that, you know, they deserve.
Absolutely. We'll discuss that, as we said, with Michael Clark. Also with Lord Darroch, the former ambassador to the US, joins us shortly as well.
Thanks for being with us. Well, the dramatic spike in oil prices because of the Iran war has raised questions about whether or not the UK's government is doing enough to increase our own supply, and particularly, I think, reopen that debate about drilling in the North Sea. Our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, has been taking a look at how much oil and gas is left in the North Sea basin and how we might be able to boost our own domestic supply.
Now, it's sometimes forgotten, actually, that for a long time Britain was one of the biggest oil producers in the world. You may not remember this, but back in the 1980s, look at this. This is the world's top 25 oil producers. The UK was number 5 in 1986. Now, even by 2000, we were in the top 10. It's worth just remembering that when you kind of think back, I mean, to where we are now. So this is where we are now. 2024, we are back in 24th position. But remember that we used to produce a lot of oil and gas out of the North Sea. However, now there's this kind of assumption that we're facing an inevitable decline. And if you look at gas production, so this is just gas production, oil production is kind of similar pathway. This is where the official projections from the North Sea Transitional Authority, the kind of group that does the kind of independent regulator, this is where the pathway that they've mapped out for where we go in the future. And, you know, it's a pretty clear chart, isn't it? It looks like there's not much upside. And actually, they say even if you had a little bit of extra exploration, that line could be a bit higher. But it raises the question, what if you assume that the tax environment, the regulatory environment is much more friendly towards oil producers, making it much more attractive for them to go out there into the North Sea and do more digging and more exploration? Well, OE UK, which is the group, the lobby group for all of those North Sea producers, they've done precisely that. And here is what they've found. They think, actually, gas production, it would still go down, but it would go down much less quickly. To the extent, and this is obviously a best-case scenario, but it's very different to that line, which a lot of people thought was, you know, in concrete, to the extent that in 2035, you have more than double the production in the North Sea than you do currently. Really striking. And if you look specifically at that period, well, just consider where the gas comes from at the moment. So right now, this is where our total gas demand, some of it comes from the UK, from the North Sea. Quite a lot of it comes from Norway. And then a chunk comes from liquefied natural gas. And a lot of that gets sent over to the continent. In 2035, if you assume that that line is just going to go down and down and down, this is how things look. So UK gas only provides 18% of all of the gas that we need, the North Sea. Norway provides still quite a lot, because it has a bit more. But LNG, liquefied natural gas, the stuff that comes from Qatar, or doesn't right now, provides 46% of all of the UK's gas. That is the kind of official projection at the moment. But now assume that we do get more out of the North Sea, that line I showed you a moment ago is indeed, plausible. And here's how things look. Instead now, UK gas provides 57% of all of the gas that we're consuming, and LNG is down at 6%. Now, this is a projection. It's a best-case scenario, and we just don't know whether it's actually going to be borne out. But given the debate right now, given how much focus there is on the North Sea, and given the government has yet to even officially legislate for some of the new bans on extra licences it's planning for, there's some big questions that are going to be asked in the coming weeks.
Well, let's discuss all this with the Chief Executive of Good Energy, Nigel Pocklington, who's here with me. Very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Just for those that don't know, what is Good Energy?
So we are a renewable supplier, so we guarantee that the electricity we supply comes from small renewable generators, and the gas we supply has a high component of recycled green gas in it. And we are increasingly an installer of solar power systems, storage systems for businesses, homes and public sector buildings.
And I guess one of the sort of obvious points to take from Ed's piece is, regardless of exactly where our gas and oil comes from by 2035, even as a sort of renewable energy fan, is it fair to say that we're still going to need a lot of those fossil fuels by then?
Yes, that's absolutely right. We have a gas-dependent system today. In fact, we're, by most measures, the most gas-dependent country in Western Europe, because we use it so much for electricity generation as well as home heating. And we're not going to get off that dependency anytime soon. So clearly it makes national economic sense to have as cost-effective a supply of gas as you can achieve. Maybe what is harder to sort of really accept is the idea that we can once again sort of be self-sufficient in gas, which I think most people would say is it's 25 years since we were self-sufficient in gas, and the idea that we can set the gas price as opposed to just be a price taker, as Ed Miliband puts it, which I think is a position we are stuck with.
In terms of renewables, clearly you guys want to plough ahead with that as aggressively as possible. We'll come to that in a moment. Does it make a difference to the prospect of that if our gas comes from abroad or domestically?
Not particularly. I think that the overall price of gas is a driver of many things in the energy market in the UK, and it's a driver of high prices. And that, for us, is an argument to saying we should accelerate our drive towards renewables, we should accelerate the rollout of solar across, frankly, as many buildings as will take it. That, I think, is a big driver. Otherwise, not particularly.
Talk to me about the prospect for solar across small buildings, because I guess, to state the obvious, wind farms are much more expensive. They're offshore. They have to be in very windy places. Is there an argument for all homes to have solar panels on their roofs?
Certainly all eligible homes, yes. I mean, a home with solar panels and a battery who don't have particularly high energy usage could expect to be reasonably self-sufficient during most of the sort of summer months and to make substantial savings on their energy. And actually, you see that effect magnified in the business world. A lot of people forget the sort of costs of energy to business are very, a key driver of our economy. And there we can see people get a payback in sort of 3 to 4 years, just simply because they've got big roof spaces and they use a lot of energy during the day. So, yes, it can make a huge difference.
Is our grid ready for the broader aspects that we talk about, the renewable shift? Solar panels on roofs doesn't need to change the grid. What about renewables more broadly to power everything?
Yeah, so you're right. Small-scale solar, absolutely fine. Larger-scale solar, so, for example, seeing solar as an important part of the solution for the increasing number of data centres we're going to need to build and power, that does need grid reform, and it does just need quicker access to a more robust electricity grid than we have today.
When will that be ready by?
Well, the current projections are that this is a sort of an exercise for this decade, really, and the sort of grid improvements are going to sort of flow on from the second part of this decade onwards. It's a big area of investment at the moment, though, because one of the things we're doing is playing catch-up for an infrastructure that really hasn't been invested in for much of the last 25, 30 years. And that's one of the things that's driving costs at the moment.
So to wrap things up, I mean, going all guns blazing as much as possible into renewables sounds like something you're fully more gas coming from UK resources, or is that not really a swing factor for you?
I don't think it's a swing factor for us. Look, anyone who's running an energy supply business does not want high energy costs and certainly doesn't want any sustained periods of high energy costs. You can see what they do to consumers and businesses. If I thought it would make a big difference, I would advocate for it passionately, despite our renewables focus. I actually don't. I don't think there's very credible evidence that the North Sea is capable of kind of really giving us enough gas that it will change the price we have to pay, for example. So there may well be some pragmatic choices to be made, but it shouldn't divert us from what we really need to do, which is to get self-sufficient on energy that we actually control, which is from a renewable source.
Nigel, thanks for joining us. Good to see you. Nigel Pocklington from Good Energy.